My name is Layla, and I'm 37 years old, working as a homemaker. I've been married to my husband Jimmy for 13 years now. Currently, we are living together as a family of 4 with our daughter Karen and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after my father-in-law passed away, we started living with my mother-in-law at her place. Living with mother-in-law in her home was anything but peaceful. Suddenly, after we moved in, she began to harass me. "Is dinner ready?" "Oh, yes. It will be done shortly." "How long are you planning to make everyone wait?" While I was cooking, mother-in-law came into the kitchen and started tasting the food. "Layla, this pot roast has no flavor. It's awful." "Oh, really? I thought I had seasoned it well. How could you taste it and still have it turn out like this? You are really bad at cooking." Jimmy and Karen must feel so pitiful with this food. "I'm sorry. Jimmy must be having a hard time with such a useless wife. Hurry up and set the table." She complained constantly but never helped with preparing dinner. Mother-in-law didn't just push cooking onto me, she left all household chores to me and just lazed around the house during the day. "Dinner's ready, everyone." As the whole family sat down and started eating, Jimmy and Karen praised the pot roast that mother-in-law had earlier criticized, saying, "This pot roast is delicious." "Yeah, Mom, it's tasty." Then mother-in-law said, "Yes, indeed. The seasoning is just right." She was now saying the exact opposite of what she had said before. Despite her harassment and nasty comments to me, she always spoke kindly to Jimmy and Karen, probably not wanting them to dislike her. "Layla is really good at cooking." "Oh, thank you." In front of Jimmy and Karen, she sometimes praises me. "Today, Layla did all the housework, considering my health. She's truly a capable wife." Is that right, Layla? In truth, mother-in-law had just forced household chores onto me. No. As I tried to deny it, mother-in-law kicked my leg under the table where no one else could see. "Ah, yes. That's true. Thanks for always being kind to my mom." Jimmy thanked me with a beaming smile. Even though that wasn't the truth. I could never hide my bewilderment at mother-in-law's blatant attitude. Because of this, Jimmy never noticed that I was being harassed, and he even thought that mother-in-law and I got along well. Jimmy really cared for mother-in-law, and when father-in-law passed away, he was more concerned for her than anyone else. I couldn't bring myself to say anything bad about mother-in-law to such a loving Jimmy and had never been able to talk to him about it. Karen being very fond of mother-in-law was another reason why I couldn't consult anyone. When it was decided that we'd live together with my in-laws, Karen said, "Yay! I get to live with Grandma now," and was delighted. Mother-in-law adored Karen, and they always played together, took baths together, they were very close. Taking advantage of that, mother-in-law's harassment towards me escalated. When I came back from shopping, the room was all messed up. "Hey! Mother-in-law, what happened? Why is everything so scattered?" I asked, surprised, and mother-in-law answered with a smirk. I couldn't find something, and before I knew it, it had become a mess. The house wouldn't be turned upside down just from looking for something. Mother-in-law surely did it to harass me. "Sorry. I'm going to dinner with friends now. Cleanup's on you." As expected, I ended up cleaning, and mother-in-law fled the house. That day, cleaning took all day, and I couldn't do any other chores. Then mother-in-law came back home and said, "Laundry, dishes, cleaning, none of it's done? What on earth were you doing?" Holding back my anger at mother-in-law's scheme, I quietly continued with the housework. "Hurry up, or everyone will come home. If Jimmy realizes what an incapable wife you are, he'll surely divorce you." Mother-in-law never helped with the chores and constantly nagged and rushed me. I was getting more and more frantic as dinner was nowhere near ready. In the end, dinner was late. What? Dinner's not ready yet? I'm sorry. It'll be ready soon. Just wait a bit longer. Jimmy asked, looking concerned. Are you feeling ill? No, it's not that, but... I thought about explaining why dinner was late, but when I glanced at mother-in-law, she was glaring as if to say, don't you dare. Today has been a bit hectic. Oh, I see. I'm sorry. No, it's totally fine. Mother-in-law seemed to be trying to portray me as an incapable wife who's hindered by her, hoping Jimmy would get fed up and divorce me. But Jimmy is so kind that instead of blaming me, he was even worried about me. Mother-in-law didn't find this amusing, and her daily harassment towards me only escalated. Lately, it's not just about the harassment towards me. She started interfering with Karen's affairs. You two seem to be trying to get Karen into a private middle school. Yes, we are. Is there a problem with that? It's cruel to make her study late every night for exams. Stop it right now. Well, we're not going to stop just because you said so. Karen herself has expressed a desire to go to a private middle school. We are not forcing her to study and go against her will. Kids should just play and have fun. There's no need to force them to study now. But working hard now will open up more options for her future, and Karen wants this. You're not doing it for Karen, you're forcing it on her, aren't you? That's not true. Lately, as Karen has been studying at night and attending tutoring, our time together has decreased, and mother-in-law seemed displeased. Just give up on the middle school exams. It's a waste of time. I couldn't hold back my anger at this comment. I was furious at mother-in-law for disrespecting Karen's feelings and only saying selfish things. Isn't it normal to support Karen when she wants to do this? What? How dare you talk back? Mother-in-law was quite surprised as I had never talked back before. Karen's exams have nothing to do with you, mother-in-law. What do you mean, nothing to do? I'm her grandmother. Feeling like arguing would get us nowhere, I left saying, Enough of this. I'm going to pick up Karen. Mother-in-law continued to harass me in front of Jimmy and Karen, seemingly unable to let go of me talking back. Today's dinner looks plain? Is this all we have? I guess she must have been furious with me. You can't even think about feeding a growing child? I'm sorry. Finally, Jimmy couldn't just listen in silence and snapped at mother-in-law. Come on, Mom. Don't complain about the meal that Layla made. His anger ignited. Jimmy had mother-in-law flustered. She quickly backpedaled. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not what I meant to say. Not wanting to start another fight, I brushed it off with, It's fine. After dinner, while I was washing dishes, mother-in-law came over and muttered, Remember this, and went back to her room. From then on, every day was filled with fear, wondering what she might do next. Then, one day. It was the day of Karen's acceptance announcement. We headed to the venue, all nerves. When we checked the bulletin board, Karen's number was clearly written there. You did it, Karen. Awesome. You got accepted. Yay. We were all overjoyed. Karen had been studying without a break for months. Thanks to her efforts, she had passed the middle school exams. We have to celebrate today. Yes. Karen, what would you like to eat? Steak. Steak was Karen's absolute favorite. Should we order delivery today? Hooray! On my way home, I called the steakhouse and ordered a luxury steak for delivery. We also decided to buy a cake, so I made a small detour on my way home, asking my mother-in-law to receive the steak delivery at the house. When I called mother-in-law, she said, "Understood. I'll take care of it." Because of various detours, we were completely past lunchtime by the time we got home. "I'm starving. I want to eat the steak now." "You're right, we're late. The steak should be here, so let's eat plenty." "Okay." When we arrived home, we just ran into mother-in-law's friends as they were leaving. They all said in unison, "Thanks for the feast," and left, making me wonder what was going on. I had a bad feeling and rushed into the house. The delivered steak was all messed up on the table. "Mother-in-law, did you eat this steak?" "Oh, if it's the delivery steak, I enjoyed it with my friends at a luncheon. You'll pay for it later." "What are you doing?" When I yelled at mother-in-law, she replied, "You were probably planning to order delivery and slack off from housework. I won't allow that. This was to celebrate Karen's success." "Success celebration? What success?" I had told mother-in-law in advance that today was Karen's exam acceptance announcement. She seemed to have forgotten because she hadn't listened to me. Karen and Jimmy arrived late. Karen had heard our conversation in the corridor and was crying. "Grandma's so mean." Karen had been excited to report to Grandma quickly, but to think that she didn't even remember the acceptance announcement day. I thought it was understandable for Karen to cry. "Mom, today was Karen's middle school acceptance announcement. How could you forget such an important day?" "That's awful." Mother-in-law seemed unable to hide her agitation. "What, today? Layla, why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I did tell you. I was too stunned to even feel angry. Karen worked hard and got accepted, so we were going to celebrate by eating her favorite steak. To think you'd eat it with your friends. I can't believe it." "No, it wasn't like that. I really didn't know." "You didn't know? I called you about the delivery, didn't I?" "That's..." "Mom, did you eat it on purpose?" "On purpose, you say?" Mother-in-law's face turned paler and paler, and she began to sweat. She was desperately trying to think of an excuse, but seemed to have no words to say. "I've suspected this for a while, but you really are harassing Layla, aren't you?" It seems Jimmy had a vague idea of what was going on. But since I didn't talk to him about it, he just watched the situation. Suddenly mother-in-law approached Karen and said, "I'm sorry. Let's all go to the steakhouse. I'll pay." Karen responded, "I hate Grandma." She pushed mother-in-law away and ran to her room. The shock of being hated by her beloved granddaughter seemed to be tremendous, and mother-in-law froze after falling on her bottom. After that, I told Jimmy everything about how mother-in-law had been harassing me. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I couldn't say anything when I thought about you and Karen. I'm sorry for forcing you all this time. You don't have to endure it anymore." Jimmy suggested that we move to make sure I wouldn't be harassed anymore. Since Karen also said she didn't want to live with mother-in-law anymore, we were able to leave the house without worry. Thank you. On moving day, while I was packing, mother-in-law came into the room. "Are you really leaving the house?" Mother-in-law's face looked like she was about to cry. "Yes." "You must be glad to be away from me, whom you hate." "I don't exactly hate you." "Can you please leave? You're in the way of my packing." As I tried to drive mother-in-law out of the room, she suddenly began to plead. "Please don't leave. I'll apologize for everything. Please. I can't bear to be apart from Karen. Karen also says she doesn't want to live with you." No matter how much I explained, mother-in-law wouldn't let go, clinging and crying. So I made a proposal. Actually, we're moving to my parents' house. If you really can't bear to be apart from Karen, will you come with us? My father is very stern, with a scary face. I knew mother-in-law knew that, so I said it a bit maliciously, thinking she would never agree, but surprisingly. I understand. That's fine with me. I was stunned that she agreed. It seems mother-in-law wanted to be with Karen that badly. Since she wouldn't harass me in front of my parents, and if she did, I could report it to my father, I agreed to live together. Jimmy said, "Sorry, if something happens with my mom coming along, feel free to kick her out." So we all moved to my parents' house, and the cohabitation began. My father seemed dissatisfied with mother-in-law came with us. Of course, he knew how mother-in-law had harassed me and ruined Karen's celebration. He didn't blame her directly, but his silent pressure kept mother-in-law shrinking. She spoke less, seemed downcast. Whenever my mother and I asked for help with housework, she readily complied and worked hard. I couldn't help but laugh at her changed appearance. Life went on without any incidents for a while, but finally, mother-in-law reached her limit and yelled, "I'm sick of this house." My father is intimidating, and Karen still can't get through to him. I think Jimmy's attitude toward mother-in-law has become colder because he couldn't endure various things anymore. "Karen, let's go home together." Mother-in-law tried to forcibly pull a resistant Karen and leave the house. "Mother-in-law, stop it. Can't you see Karen doesn't want to go? It's better to be with me than in this house." At that moment, my father arrived. "What are you doing? Knock it off." Frightened by my father's forceful yell, mother-in-law froze in fear. "I allowed you to live with us because you said you didn't want to be apart from your granddaughter. But if you try to take Karen against her will, I'll call the police for kidnapping." "I didn't mean to, that way." Hearing my father's shout, Jimmy also rushed over. "Mom, what are you doing? Just leave us, we can't be bothered by you anymore." "I'm cutting ties completely." "No way." Then Karen shook off mother-in-law's hand and screamed, "Get out!" Even mother-in-law seemed shocked by this, dropping her shoulders and leaving the house in tears. Now she's back at her house, living a lonely life. Afterwards, mother-in-law became reclusive, and it seems that even neighbors and friends have started keeping their distance. On the other hand, our family is living peacefully every day. Karen is studying hard at a private school every day, and Jimmy has become very friendly with my parents, especially my father, with whom he drinks every day. I wish I had talked to Jimmy earlier and moved to my parents' house. "Everything looks delicious," the elderly lady said, gently lowering her eyes as she stood next to her husband. Most of the customers visiting the bakery were familiar faces from the neighborhood, but this elderly couple was new to me. "What is this feeling?" I wondered, caught in a strangely comforting sensation that I couldn't quite put into words. Listening to their exchange, I inexplicably found their voices soothing. It was a nostalgic sound, like something I'd lost a long time ago, the kindly smiling face of the elderly lady. Where could it be? Where had I seen these two before? Then I remembered, the husband had been looking outside through the shop's partition, and it was then I first noticed another person standing outside. A woman in her 60s, pacing back and forth in front of the shop, glancing our way but quickly averting her gaze and hurrying off whenever our eyes met. But after a while, she returned and looked our way again. "Hey, why don't you come in?" The husband called out to her impatiently, followed by the elderly lady. "Yes, do come in, won't you?" Encouraging. Then, turning her gaze back to me, she smiled. "She's our daughter," and said, "I'll have the croissant." "Please give me a croissant," the woman said, covering her face with her hands as she timidly entered the shop. As I packed the croissant into a bag. Today is our granddaughter's birthday. She loves croissants. The elderly lady smiled joyfully. What a coincidence. Today is my birthday too. I've loved croissants since I was a child. The elderly lady laughed, but then, seeing my name tag. You, this person. She suddenly trembled and started to cry. My name is Amelia, a 40-year-old single mother. I'm currently working at the bakery while raising my daughter Lily, who just started elementary school. I don't want Lily to feel lonely, but the early mornings at the bakery and not being able to spend much time with her is my biggest worry. Starting with the early morning prep, closing the shop at 7 p.m., and when I get home, Lily always clings to me, but I'm too tired to properly engage with her. I'm making my child feel lonely after all. I reflect, looking at my sleeping child's face. Growing up, my family situation was always different compared to others. I barely remember seeing my dad, Matthew, around the house. Whether I was going to school in the morning, coming back in the afternoon, or even at bedtime, Matthew was hardly ever home. On the rare occasions he did come home, he'd take cash from Mom's wallet and leave without a word, heading out again. I grew up thinking that's just how dads were, believing it was normal. However, when I saw a friend walking happily with her family in town one Sunday, I began to wonder for the first time if my family was a bit odd. My friend had a happy look on her face and said, "We're going to a restaurant with Dad and Mom, just the three of us." So, I asked, "Is today some special occasion?" She shook her head. "It's a weekly thing," and replied. The next day, when I was talking about it at school, everyone seemed to say in unison, "Isn't that normal? Is it different for Amelia's family?" As if they were looking at something strange. Matthew hardly ever came home, but in my memory, Mia, who is my mom, was also rarely at home. Mia worked as an insurance agent, and it wasn't unusual for her to have meetings in the evening since some clients were only available during the day, inevitably making her return home late. By that time, I would already be wrapped up in my futon, asleep, but I'd wake up to the sound of the front door opening and closing and footsteps, and call out, "Mom." To which Mia would only say, "Still awake? Go back to sleep." Without any real conversation, I'd fall back asleep and wake up in the morning to find Mia had already left for work, leaving behind a prepared breakfast on the dining table for me to eat alone. Feeling inferior because my circumstances were so different from my friends, I gradually started to distance myself from them, going straight home after school without speaking to anyone. And in the empty house, I would always immerse myself in playing house alone. Seeing this, my maternal grandmother Chloe said, "Why don't you come over to our place to play?" From then on, my place to be was a bit away from home at my grandparents' house. When I was playing house alone, "Let me join in." Chloe would suddenly join in with a voice like a little girl's, saying, "Hello, Amelia." When I got tired of playing house, my grandfather Kevin, who would have just returned from gardening, would join us and the three of us would play cards, or solve puzzles from a quiz book Kevin picked up on his walk from the bookstore. Tired from playing? I bought croissants, let's wash our hands and eat them together. Eating croissants that Chloe bought from a nearby bakery became a habit. With my grandparents sharing one between them and me biting into my own, saying, "This is delicious." Chloe would reply, "It's delicious, isn't it?" The taste of the croissants was wonderful, but more than that, I can now say with certainty that what made me happiest was spending time with my grandparents. Sometimes, when Mia, my mom, finished work early and came home, she would, on those rare occasions, hand me a capsule toy from the nearby game center, saying, "Here, a souvenir." I don't need this. Not knowing how to deal with my mom. Thank you. I couldn't straightforwardly say. Still, Mia kept buying capsule toys and handing them to me without getting discouraged. I couldn't understand why she kept doing that as a child, but now I think that might have been her clumsy way of showing love. Matthew and Mia eventually started to argue all the time, even when I was asleep in my bedroom. Suddenly, I would wake up to their yelling at each other. You're always like this. You go to work but hardly ever bring any salary home. Shut up. It's my money. I'll spend it however I want. It felt like they repeated this kind of exchange every night. Eventually, they seemed to give up on each other, the energy in their quarrels faded, and they stopped talking altogether. Then one day, Mia left the house without saying anything to me and never came back. After Mom left, leaving a huge void in my heart. She abandoned you. She chose her job over her own child. She's not fit to be a mom, my paternal grandmother Zoe said. Hearing Mia badmouthed every day as I was overwhelmed by an indescribable despair, I wished I could run away to my maternal grandparents' house to fill the void in my heart. In front of the house, there was a for sale sign, and at that time, not understanding what it meant, I trespassed into the house looking for my grandparents, but there was no sign of anyone. They must have gone out. I believed they would return soon and waited for hours, but my grandparents never came back. As the day turned to evening, filled with anxiety and fear, I cried out loudly. Grandma! Grandpa! And perhaps a neighbor called the police because a patrol officer came and the officer joked with me, but I stubbornly refused to move. You shouldn't enter places like this without permission. Don't play around here and come out. If you don't go home soon, you might even see a ghost. Really, what a troublesome child. Complaining as if bothered, Zoe's voice pulling me by the hand to take me home still sticks in my memory even years later. Matthew was often away from home, and even more so, began to leave for days at a time, increasing his outings. With the nuisance Mia gone, maybe Matthew felt freer to go out. When I became a middle schooler, Matthew, either lacking confidence in raising a child alone or never considering me in the first place, hesitantly placed me in a foster care without any hesitation. The child welfare officer repeatedly asked Matthew, "Are you sure about this?" To which Matthew grimaced as if annoyed. Yeah, and gestured dismissively, leaving the officer in disbelief. I had always been alone and did not seek Dad's love anymore, so being placed in foster care didn't make me feel sad or hard. In the facility, I could take care of myself without any trouble. In fact, there were many younger children, and to help reduce the burden on the busy staff, I cared for them as if they were my own siblings. Having Amelia here is a big help. Thank you, as always. I was thanked by the facility staff, but for me, having people to talk to and distract from loneliness might have been enough. Interacting with children who had various circumstances made me realize I wasn't special, and seeing the children rely on me made me want to try hard for someone else's sake. One day, when croissants were served as a snack, the sight of them suddenly reminded me of the warm and gentle days spent with my grandparents, and I couldn't help but burst into tears. Why are you crying, big sis? I wonder why. Maybe it's because I remembered the precious times from the past. This is delicious. I've never eaten such a tasty bread before. Seeing the children stuff their mouths full of croissant and show their bright smiles, I started to dream of working in a bakery someday. After graduating middle school, I chose a high school with a home economics course. I was confident in cooking, but the school offered lessons from the basics of baking, making it an ideal environment for someone aspiring to be a baker. Upon graduating high school and leaving the facility, I immediately landed a job at the bakery I had always dreamed of, and at the same time found an apartment that was a bit small but just right for living alone. The bakery was a small shop run by a couple who were both bright and kind, treating me like their real child. The concept of this story is, we want to deliver delicious food to families. We want to see happy faces of families. Treat every customer as if they're precious family. When I started working, the owner instructed me with those words. Hearing the word family, I didn't quite understand what it meant at first, but I thought of the faces of the children at the facility. No matter how early the mornings were, remembering their happy faces made all the hardships vanish in an instant, and I mysteriously didn't feel the pain during preparation work. When a customer with children said, "The bread here is delicious," my face would unconsciously smile. "You have a nice smile," and the owner would praise me. One day, as I admired a mother and child buying croissants to take home, the owner gently asked, "Amelia, I've always wondered, do croissants hold a special meaning for you?" "The taste reminds me of memories eating with my grandparents. I spent a lot of time with them as a child." I shared with the owner my journey from early childhood to entering the facility. Then the owner began with a preface. "If it were possible, would you want to meet your grandparents again if you could? What about Mom? Would you want to live with them?" Caught off guard by such an unexpected question, I was at a loss for words. Honestly, there were many times I wished I could meet them. Yet, I felt like I shouldn't want to meet them. Both my grandparents and Mom had abandoned me, and I kept telling myself that there was no way we could meet again. "I don't think so. I've never thought about it even once," I answered, avoiding the owner's gaze as if trying not to let him read my mind. "I see. That's fine then." The owner showed an ambiguous reaction. Whether he believed me or not was unclear. When about 10 years had passed since I started working at the bakery, there was a significant change in my personal life. I fell in love with a male regular who always came to buy and married him 6 months into our relationship. We struggled to have children for a few years, but at the age of 34, I was finally blessed with a daughter, Lily. However, right after the child was born, my husband became cold towards me, and constant quarrels led to divorce. The custody battle was contentious, but thanks to a skilled lawyer introduced by the owner, I managed not to lose Lily. Yet, seeing Lily's lonely expression sometimes made me reflect. Have I only made my daughter feel the same way I did? As I watched her sleeping face. One day, while eating dinner with my daughter, Lily, who had just started elementary school, was curiously looking at a small rubber doll toy. "What's that? Did we have this?" I was puzzled by the unfamiliar toy, but then noticed a capsule toy container on the floor. "Did you buy this?" I asked. "A strange lady gave it to me earlier." "A lady? Where did you meet her? What did she look like?" "She was standing in front of our house when I came back from school. Much older than you, Mom. She seemed to know you. She gave it to me." I wondered, who could it be? Thinking it might be someone from the facility as I tried to recall any acquaintances, but I cautioned my daughter. "Don't follow strangers even if they talk to you." The next day, as I was standing in the shop as usual, an elderly couple I hadn't seen around here came in. Most customers of the bakery are local acquaintances, but sometimes people come from afar having heard of the shop's reputation. I thought this elderly couple was just such customers, but then... What's this feeling? I was caught by a strangely familiar, comforting sensation that words couldn't quite describe. "All these look delicious," the elderly woman said happily, turning to her husband standing beside her. Yet for some reason, her voice also made me feel inexplicably comfortable. It was a voice from a distant past, a familiar yet nostalgic tone, the elderly woman's kindly smiling face. Where have I seen these two before? I noticed the husband kept glancing outside the shop, and I thought he wanted to leave quickly, but the woman didn't seem to rush him. Then I noticed for the first time that there was someone else standing outside the shop. A woman in her 60s was pacing back and forth in front of the shop, glancing over here but quickly looking away whenever our eyes met, then hurrying off. But after a while, she came back and looked over when the impatient husband called out to the woman, "Hey, why don't you come in too? Come on in, don't be shy." Followed by the elderly woman. The elderly woman turned her gaze back to me. "She's our daughter," and smiled. "Everything looks delicious, but we'll have the croissants." "Please, croissants." Though I thought she wouldn't be shy at her age, the elderly couple's daughter covered her face with her hands, timidly entering the shop. As I was bagging the croissants, the elderly woman smiled happily. "Today is our grandchild's birthday. She has always loved croissants. Thinking of meeting her again makes me so happy." She expressed her joy. "Really? What a coincidence. Today is my birthday too. I've loved croissants since I was a child." The elderly woman laughed. "Is that so?" But after seeing my nameplate, this person, she suddenly trembled. Confused, I asked, "Are you okay?" Instead of answering, the elderly woman murmured, "I'm glad to see you're well. To think this day would come. I'm glad I lived to see it." Amelia, right? It's me, do you recognize? Don't you remember?" Saying that, the elderly woman suddenly began to cry. Every time I encountered the elderly woman's kind face and her gentle voice, I felt an unbearable tightness in my chest. Now gone to a distant place, a precious presence that warmly enveloped me. Could it be Grandma? Grandma Chloe? "Amelia, you remembered me," said my grandmother Chloe as she wrapped my hand in her warm ones. That meant the woman who had been looking down behind the partition. "Mom, right?" "Yes, your mom," said the woman, finally speaking up. Because over 30 years had passed since our last goodbye, I hadn't immediately recognized the three when they entered the shop. But the three in front of me were unmistakably my grandparents and Mom. Trembling, I handed the goods to Chloe. "I still have work to do, so later. We'll be resting at the park over there. No matter how late, it's okay. I want to talk to you," Chloe said, looking into my eyes with a firm tone. The owner, who had watched everything from the back of the shop, came over to me. "I told your mom and them where you live, was that okay? I had a feeling you actually wanted to meet your mom and grandparents." "No, it's fine. Thank you. Looks like it's slow today, let's close up early." So, changing into my private clothes and without even taking my bag, I dashed out the back door of the shop. Bringing the three back to my apartment, it felt cramped for a studio, but it might have been just the right size to fill the hole in my heart that had separated me from my family for so many years. Opening the door, Lily, who had returned from school, was doing her homework. "Ah, the lady who gave me the toy yesterday." She pointed at Mia. "How did you know I was living in this town?" Mia repeatedly apologized to me. "Sorry," explaining how she ended up here after the divorce. My dad, Matthew, worked in a small-town factory but never brought his earnings home, spending it all on drink the same day he received it. "What about Amelia? Raising a child will cost money." Mia, needing to raise young me, decided to work in her husband's place. Yet, Matthew's wastefulness didn't improve, and he began to stay away from home more often. Angered, Mia proposed divorce to Matthew. However, during the divorce mediation, Matthew's mom, Zoe, harshly said, "If you really want a divorce, leave Amelia behind." Mia didn't want to give up her child, whom she had born and raised, but believed Zoe when she was told, "That child hates you." "No way." I was infuriated hearing this, but Mia repeated, that's right," nodding. "But back then, I genuinely believed you hated me. You never seemed happy, even when I bought you toys." Mia, awkward in expressing affection, seemed to have misread my feelings even until the divorce. "If I think about it now, I should never have let you go." Afterwards, Mia, as if cutting off memories with her daughter, threw herself into work, but one day, after 30 years, she accidentally met Matthew in town. To Mia, he was like a stranger, but she was still concerned about her only daughter and confronted Matthew about me, who nonchalantly admitted to leaving me in a facility. "I had no idea you were put in a facility. I'm so sorry." From then on, Mia, working in a job with flexible hours and collaborating with my grandparents, traced my steps from the facility to the bakery. "I've been looking for you for so long, and finally found out you were working at that bakery. You were out for delivery, so I asked the shopkeeper for your apartment." Grandma Chloe's warm and gentle hands enveloped mine. "Why did you all leave without saying anything to me?" Instead of Chloe, Mia continued, "I forced myself to ask them. After Matthew and I divorced, I stayed with my parents for a while. Your house was so close, and every time I saw you, I wanted to hug you immediately. But I thought you hated me, and if we couldn't meet anyway, staying in the same town would just make it harder for me. So, I decided to leave that town with my parents. It was hard for me too. Even after I couldn't see Amelia anymore, I was always thinking about you. What you might be doing now. Are you eating well? Have you caught a cold? That's all I could think about." As Chloe said this, she tightly closed her eyes and looked up at the ceiling, but the tears rolling down from the corners of her eyes didn't stop. "Thank you, Grandma. I didn't know you were looking for me. I had always thought I was abandoned by Mom and my grandparents. But learning they had taken the time to find me, I felt like a dam holding back years of emotion had suddenly burst, and I couldn't stop crying. Let's live together again, okay? Shall we?" Mia caressed my shoulder and said, but I couldn't simply say yes. Mia hadn't abandoned me by choice. It was a series of events that led to an unfortunate decision. Even though I understood that intellectually, my feelings couldn't readily accept her suggestion to live together again. Dispelling the doubts I had held about Mom in just one day was too short a time. "Give me some time to think." "Of course. We're staying at a hotel for now, so please contact us whenever you feel like it." Saying that, Mia left a note with her contact information and left with my grandparents. Lily, not fully aware of the situation, asked anxiously, "Are you okay, Mom?" Trying not to worry her, I forced a change in my mood. "Are you hungry? What do you want for dinner?" "I want quiche." "I love the quiche you make, Mom." Lily smiled widely and hugged my waist. "I would never let go of this child." And hugged my waist. As I poured the beaten eggs into the frying pan, I remembered a morning from my elementary school days. The morning after Mia left, I woke up to find a quiche she had prepared in advance on the dining table with a note in Mia's handwriting. "Reheat and eat." As I thought about it, the eggs got too cooked. "Sorry, Lily. The eggs got a bit firm. Forgive me?" "It can't be helped, Mom." Lily sighed but smiled. Am I like Mia was back then? The thought that I might be making Lily feel lonely troubled me. After dinner, as I was doing the dishes, Lily rummaged through her school bag and approached me on tiptoe and called out, "Mom, look this way." Turning off the faucet and looking back, Lily had drawn a full-page portrait of me on drawing paper. "Good luck at work." Next to it was a message. "Happy birthday, Mom." "I love you, Mom." "Thank you." Overwhelmed by my daughter's casual kindness, I felt a warm surge of emotion. "Mom, are you crying? Why? Was something bad?" I wiped my tears and said, "Of course, it's because I'm happy." Lily looked puzzled. "Do people cry when they're happy too?" "Yes, that happens. My greatest joy is seeing you grow up healthy and happy." I had been so caught up in work from morning till night that I hadn't been able to pay enough attention to home and Lily. I thought maybe Lily hated me, but she told me she loved me. "Thank you, Lily. I'm so grateful you were born my child." The next day was Saturday, and the shop was very busy, but the owner, knowing the situation, offered me a break. "Now that we have a young part-timer, you can take some time off." So, I decided to take Lily out to town. As we entered the restaurant, holding Lily's hand, Mia and my grandparents were already waiting inside. "Thank you for coming today. I was a bit worried you might not." Kevin, who is usually quiet, couldn't hide his relief. Lily, a bit tense seeing the three in front of her. "Hello," greeted them. "Well done. You're Lily, right? How old are you?" "I'm 6 years old." "So, 6 years old. That was about how old Amelia was when she started living apart from us." Chloe showed a complex expression, a mix of the loneliness from separation and the joy of reunion. Lily, initially stiff in front of her great-grandparents, relaxed by the time the meal was served, engaging in conversation on her own. Looking back, I don't remember ever being taken to a restaurant by my parents as a child. I never want Lily to feel that kind of loneliness. "It might be presumptuous of me to ask this," Mia started, exchanging glances and nods with my grandparents. "If you are okay with it, would you like to live with us? Not in your current apartment, but in a new house we could buy and live happily together. What do you think?" "If Lily is okay with it," I found myself saying before I could think it through. Patting Lily's head. "What do you think? Would you like to live with these grandparents?" "Yeah, that would be nice." Mia covered her face with a handkerchief, her shoulders shaking. On the other hand, my dad, Matthew, even though retired now, still spends too much time and money on leisure, estranged even from his own parents, I heard through the grapevine. Rumor has it there was a woman taking care of him, but she quickly grew tired of him and left, and now he's living modestly in a small apartment, cutting into his retirement fund. To us, a family that's completely cut ties, Matthew's later years are of no concern anymore. Truthfully, I'm not sure how much I can forgive and trust the mom who abandoned me, nor am I sure if we can function well as a family in the future, carrying with me a sense of insecurity. Filling a heart that has once widened isn't easy. But maybe it's okay to take it slow, if we can gradually mend our relationship. And if a day comes when I can sincerely feel grateful to be with my family. Not to return to the past, but to create new moments together. Now, surrounded by a warm family, I spend my days happily and joyfully.